Hello, welcome back to the Combo Classroom at night. Hope you're having a good Friday night or whatever time it is in your time zone. And we're going to start with illuminating this zone with some more stuff. These are not only some solar powered lights we've seen before, but here are some new varieties, some that are different colors. Now these changing color ones, in fact, still get juice from the sun. So pretty cool to charge up during the day, be able to illuminate us at night. And I'm just going to stick these in the flower bed and assume that maybe we'll get some glow in the background. Now tonight, I wanted to do another little bonus video-ish stream to cover a few topics. Well, I should be careful in this bed because I don't want to disrupt too much the potatoes that were going crazy back here. You know, potatoes started growing here. I left a bunch of larger potatoes back there. And then I dug in the soil and I found ones like this. This is a potato that is way smaller than any of the ones I put in the dirt. This just appeared, aka grew. Now, we got a couple lights like that. We also got a couple candles we'll illuminate with and be careful with. Oh shoot, I don't have a lighter. Okay, maybe we don't have candles right now. I'll probably have to take a break at some point in the stream for a minute or two inside, and at that point, I will grab a lighter for the candles. Now, today, what we want to talk about, or what I want to talk about, covers a few topics mostly mentioned in the title, one of which is that I got some more cool combo mail. That combo mail is at the mailbox that I have where viewers can send me random old clocks, dice, or whatever they choose. And I managed to stop by there this afternoon and get a few new packages. So got two cool things, well actually more than two things, but two people sent things that were in this batch that will be shared. So shout out to those combo lords who we will see more about at that point. We'll also talk a little more about this thing called Lucky Numbers that I made a short about, but whether or not you saw the short that I put out about that recently, the short, you know, is less than a minute. So even within a casual live stream, we can go deeper than a short can go by far. And the other things we're going to talk about include, like I said, Hoverflies and UFOs. We'll get to those when we get to those. To begin with, and thank you to everybody leaving nice comments. It's a later time than I sometimes do it, so I wasn't sure if we'd have many folks around, but looks like we do have some good combo lords around. Thank you all for the loving comments. Now, let's start with looking at some combo mail, and then we're going to move on to our lucky numbers, and we'll go in order of the things I put in the title. Now, somebody said lucky numbers aren't prime like ever. Well, some of the ones we mentioned are, 7 and 13 are. Some of them are lucky primes, but it is an interesting thought of when that's possible or not. We'll see, you know, a similar sieve technique to the lucky numbers that's a little different in today's live stream that does some other similar things as well. Now, let's start with this box right here. This box contains a few really cool clocks. Now, and there's another thing that, oh, I hope this one made it in the box and isn't still indoor. Yeah, here it is. This one also, sometimes the viewers leave me a note when they send a box, and this note came in a particularly cool form. It was a scroll. Now, I'm not going to share the whole note necessarily, but you see how it's like a scroll? We will share, since I said, you know, only share your name if you would like it shouted out, that this was sent by Hippie Van. And I will also, I'm not sure if they want me to share the whole letter, but I'm sure they're cool with me sharing the cool picture of a bird they drew down there. Maybe that's the classroom chicken, or maybe it's one of the birds that visits us a bunch. Maybe it's a future bird we'll have that's a real version of the classroom chicken. So that's a rather cool way to send a letter, is in a scroll that you unravel. And one of the main things here was clocks. So we got a little clock. We have another slightly larger and quite pretty clock with some cool designs on it. This one we will hang in the back at some point soon. And there's one more that I am not sure if it was already like this or not. So, unfortunately, I think there's a chance it wasn't like this until it got mailed. The third clock is semi-shattered. I do have it here. It's still good enough form for us to hang it in the background, and it'll just be quicker for the rest of the glass to break. That doesn't always mean the clock's gone once the glass is gone, but it'll be maybe quicker for the rest of the glass to fall out. Unfortunately, this other clock, I think, may have shattered in the mail, unless hopefully maybe it was already chipped in this way when it was sent. However, I think it still has all the dials that we're mostly interested in, because when we say it's shattered, really that's just the glass, and you know, that's just the fancy coat that the clock's put on. That's not the real heart and soul of the clocks, the glass. The heart and soul is the numbers and the gears and the hands. Now, so this one, as we can see, I unwrapped it like that. I think that in the mail, it may have bumped up against this one, despite it having a lot of good bubble wrap and stuff. They don't always handle this stuff the nicest in the mail, unfortunately. Sometimes it's a little rough what goes on with the packages. But the cool thing about this one, despite having, you know, already being on its way to whatever shattering will probably eventually occur to any clock here, unfortunately, this shattering was off camera, is the bit. You know, I'm not shocked that one of these clocks could eventually break, but we didn't get to incorporate the breaking into a teaching moment. And so, unfortunately, you know, hopefully it was already broken. If not, in the mail there was an incident. However, the coolest thing about this clock should still function here. They're little dials that shouldn't need electricity or battery to run. They probably have other sorts of sensors. And their humidity and thermometer. Now, I have a really cheap clock up there that does one of those. That's supposedly a thermometer. That says right now it's about 61.5 degrees. This says more like 65. I might trust this one more. I'm not sure. This one is the one that looks a little shattered, but that one was really cheap and looks plasticky compared to this. So this one could be more accurate. I'll look into if I need to batterize, put batteries in, not batter this thing to make these run at all. But theoretically, we got a clock here that not only has our numbers, but also, and they left out 3 and 9 to make room for these fellows. So 3 is our thermometer. When you're at thermometer time, that's 3, and when you're at humidity time, that's 9. Well, this clock is a triple clock, three dials in one. Now, that's pretty neat. I'll put it back here for now, because I don't want the glass to spread. And that was a lovely package from one person. There's another lovely package from another person. Thanks so much to Hippie Van for sending that. Super awesome stuff. Gonna love those clocks. We'll hang them in the background, try and keep them safe for a while, and if they ever do shatter, they'll be part of magnificent teaching moments. And there's also one more cool thing that Hippie Van sent. I forgot. I got distracted by how cool I like clocks that I forgot there's a just as cool other thing that's not a clock that was sent, which is a musical instrument. But it's not just a little percussive instrument. It looks like a frog. So that's pretty cool looking. Check out this frog thing. When I first saw it, it was wrapped separately from the stick. And so I thought, is this like a pencil holder or something? I wasn't sure it was a percussion thing at first. And that hole there made me think maybe this is just a very interesting form of pencil holder. You put your pencil in there and your paper in there. And that could be an alternate use. But then while I was unwrapping the others and I was like tapping on this thing, I was like, this feels like they've designed this to have a sort of percussive tone. Like it resonates with a louder, clearer melody than a lot of types of wood would. And so it reminded me of some instruments that used to be sold at the music shop that I worked at. I worked at a music shop for some years, first retail things for a while, and also teaching lessons for a while, and a variety of times, different jobs that I did at that music shop. And we would sell things kind of like this. And when I unraveled the stick, I knew it was definitely one of those things where sort of a percussive item where you get a few tones, one of which is sort of like a more resonant snare-like tone, and one of which is sort of a gliding, like almost like hi-hat-esque tone. So you can sort of go like, and make little melodies and such. And I'm sure that I will learn how to play this better than that as I fiddle around with it. But in general, you sort of get this sliding tone where you can choose how much you want to slide and which way you want to slide, although this way is definitely better. And then you get sort of like a resonant tone. You could also theoretically hit it on the back for a less resonant tone if you want to mix. So, shout out to Hippie Van for this stuff. Now, let's check out the next... Oh, this just lit up. For this, maybe the lid's not screwed on, it was acting funny, but... Or maybe it just wasn't dark quite enough for it to trigger. This is one of those solar-powered things where it charged up during the day, and now that it detects that there's not enough light for it to charge, it decides, time to use all the stuff I've saved. So, now let's look at the other package that was sent. And also, there is this lovely scroll I will set aside just so it doesn't get destroyed. Now, okay, it's really dark here. What's going on? Okay, I definitely need a light to go back there. Okay, here we go. This package has other sorts of things. This package does not have clocks. It has two other sorts of items. This one also has a letter, and while once again I'm not going to read the whole letter, I am going to read some of this one because it relates to the math of one of the items that was sent. And this one was sent by Mike or Michael Casebolt. And thank you so much to Mike and to Hippie Van. Now, what Mike has sent here is two things. Well, two types of thing. The first being a slide rule. Now, these are ways of comparing different sorts of measurements and doing conversions. I'm going to have to look into the details of exactly what we will do with this and exactly how I can use this properly. But essentially what it does is enact very more efficient than you may be able to expect conversions, and formulas for applying conversions can be done in conjunction with this. Now, this will definitely help us out in some fun ways. You know it's good, and you know they got some good math going on when right beyond the 3, I can't tell if this is handwritten or written by the company. I think written on this by the company, like etched in. Right beyond the 3, you got a little pi symbol. Look at that. They etched in pi right after 3. So, whichever wheel that one relates to might be something circular. or something that likes circular analysis. Now, the other thing that was sent by Mike was a cool set of dice. Now, I've mentioned people can send their old random dice, but these are actually newer, or I don't know if they're new or old, but they're new to me as far as what type of dice they are. And these dice are particular enough. We will set them aside and put them in a little jar or something. So they come with different amounts of faces. For example, here is a 5-sided dice, which I may have one of somewhere around somewhere. I don't know where my 5-sided dice is, but I think at some point I may have gotten one of those. But some of these other amounts of sides I have certainly not gotten. Some of these are strange amounts of sides. Here they have a 3-sided die. And when you roll it, it's not going to be able to stay upward. Well, I guess you could, if you're really careful, you could try and prop it upward. But if you roll it, it's highly improbable it would land on the upward part. And this way, they have 3 different ways that the number could be up. And so it's basically going to function as a 3-sided dice. Like, let me make sure my camera's at the good angle. Like, that's 3 right there, because it says 3 on both the ups. There, I got a 1. And as for the 5-sided die, this one you got to be more careful with, but apparently it's about as likely to hit all of these 5. We got a 4, which was one of the sideways ones. We got a 2, which is one of the sideways ones. We got another 4. And we got a 5, which isn't one of the sideways ones, which is one of the flat faces. Now, these other dices have dice. I'm getting confused by the pluralization. Oh man, the pluralization on dice is real bad, because the plural, it's like when you say die, it's very easy for people to mistake what word you're talking about and not think that you're properly using the singular form of dice. There's so many sounds out there. Come on. There's like, there's no word called like yai or there's a lot of words that end in I and a consonant that haven't been used. Why didn't they use one of those for it? So I know the languages collide and they form all these prefixes and suffixes, but it's always silly when there's 2 of a really common, very different word that get the same exact sound, and then there's all these sounds that aren't used. We're going to see how many sounds aren't used when we look at our episode about rhymeless words, because when you see something like that, month doesn't have or like, let's say wolf, either of those works actually, doesn't have a perfect rhyme. That means like, well, if wolf doesn't have a perfect rhyme, then bulf and kulf and dulf and mulf and all of these are unclaimed words. This is so, for every word that doesn't have a perfect rhyme, there's like every other consonant sound in that ending as an unclaimed word. And there's a surprising amount that don't have perfect rhymes. Of course, this isn't going to be, when we do that episode, impactful on how you'd use rhymes in music making or something, because it's actually more interesting to use multi-syllabic imperfect rhymes in music than to use monosyllabic perfect rhymes. So it's less related to creativity and more as a interesting, analysis of the language. We will look at how many words don't have a perfect rhyme. Now, this one is a 7-sided dice. I think I might have seen a 7-sided dice before. The 7-sided ones are pretty rare. We still need to roll some of these 1,000 times and test their how good they are at doing each side. But they look pretty well constructed. And here going forward, the rest of these I have not seen the amount of sides on a dice before. This is an 11-sided die. I've never seen that before. The sides, it doesn't have 11 sides necessarily, because sometimes the number is opposite a flat face. If you have a face land on the bottom, well, I guess that means there probably will be 11 sides, unless one of these faces has another blank bit on the opposite of it. But the face, the flat part, is at the bottom, and the number is on the top. We're used to it being mirrored, but on these dice, sometimes the number lands on a weird part because the flat part has to be opposite that, not on it. Now, there's an 11-sided dice. We got a 7 right there. This one is a 13-sided die. This one is a 17-sided die. And this one is a 19-sided die. Ooh, we're getting close to filling in all the numbers up to 20 slow and steady. Now, part of the reason there's such arbitrary seeming dice here is that they line up with a cool property. Mike says that they have a special property that allows you to generate random numbers in a uniform distribution of size n for many different n without ever requiring rerolls. For example, you could generate a random letter corresponding to the numbers 1 through 26 by using a coin, which isn't included, and the D13. Toss both of them and subtract 1 from each roll. For the coin, you could pre-assign a value of 0 and 1 to each side. Multiply the coin's value by 13, then add the value to the D13, then add 1. This can be done in a more general way. If we have a sequence of dice from 1 through M, and each die has R index I sides, and the number rolled is V index I, then we can generate a uniform random number in the range 1 through A, where A equals, and here's our formula. So there's a whole little formula right here. That this is a whole little formula. So now we'll look deeper into that. I just got this afternoon, so I haven't looked into how we're going to apply and test that. But very interesting. I will read deeper through that later. So much thanks to Mike for not only sending some sorts of dice that we don't have yet in the classroom, but also sending an instructional guide on how to apply certain formulas so that we could have many ranges that were good at randomizing. And we can already imagine other ways in which multiplying, adding, and dividing, or you can try and imagine, we may not cover it too much in this stream, ways in which we could combine these to cover different ranges, especially if we throw in the more typical dice that are somewhat expected for a dicer to have, you know, your 6s and your 12s and such. So these are quite neat. We will put those back in a box so that I don't lose them. And again, thank you to the people who sent cool stuff. So that's our little ComboMail segment. Hope you all enjoyed. We're going to move on to some lucky number math. And thank you to everybody again who has been commenting and leaving nice things. Somebody here commented that 13 is their lucky number. 13's always been a lucky number to me as well. When I was younger, 13, I had a shirt that said lucky number 13, and I would wear that a lot. I have some old pictures of me wearing this lucky number 13 shirt. I liked that some people considered it unlucky, but that I flipped it in my head to, if you're gonna consider it unlucky in a silly way, why not consider it lucky in a silly way? If you're going to be silly about the luckiness of a number, why not do it in the fun direction and not the darker direction? But, you know, you can also use it in a spooky way, but in a fun, spooky way. Like when we get, like, when we're like, let's light candles and talk about 666. It's obviously somewhat a joke, somewhat embracing the luck and unluck stereotypes. And 13, the thing is a lucky number mathematically. And it is, in the last short I made, I noted that there is something called lucky numbers in number theory. There's in fact sort of two things. There's separately been something called Euler's lucky numbers. Of course, the other thing, apart from the main one we're talking about, we're like, there's another thing related to lucky numbers, and it's the one related to, yeah, Euler. He shows up everywhere. So, yeah, there's also lucky numbers of Euler, or a nickname for different phenomena. But those are less commonly called that than these are called lucky numbers. So we'll let these have the lucky number nickname for now. And these lucky numbers essentially work by, well, why don't I pull open here the list of them so we can envision it as we go. Well, the way they work is we take like all the whole numbers and then we delete every second one, which is sort of like I'm starting the process for filtering for primes, but I wouldn't have deleted 2 in that case. I would have deleted this every second one except 2. Then I delete, the next number is 3 left. So I delete every third one that is left. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And then we have the next number is 7. So I delete every 7th one that's left. And so on. And the numbers that are left are our good old lucky numbers. Now, when I first read these, and I read 3 and 13 are on this list. Here, let me pull open the view here. This is the OEIS. We have a list of the lucky numbers. And, no, this is the wrong one. This is the next thing. This is a different, similar thing. These are the lucky numbers. We'll get to that other one in a second. Don't worry. So, I saw that 7 and 13 are both on here. And I'm going to make a short about that because it's kind of funny, because this one is considered a lucky number and actually is the name that. And this one is, in some cultures might not identify with that. The superstitions range from different regions. For example, in some Asian regions, the number 4 is unlucky. And there's other different ones based on what they sound like, what historical context they have. But in America, the unlucky ones would probably be 13 and 666. So I thought it was funny that 7 is like supposed, and 7's considered lucky. Considered lucky and is. Considered unlucky, but nope, it's lucky. So I was making that short, and I accidentally, when I was testing it, was applied the sieve, as you could say, a little different. I was like, so when I was testing this, I was like, okay, delete every second, delete every third, and then delete every fourth. Not go to the next thing there and delete all of that that's left, but then delete every fourth that's left. And when I did that, it filtered it even more. And 7 and 13 were still in there. And so I got mixed up for a minute, but those ones weren't the ones called lucky numbers. Those are the ones apparently known as Flavius Josephus's sieve. And this is where you, as they phrase what I did, start with the natural numbers. At the kth sieving step, remove every k plus 1th term of the sequence remaining after the k minus 1st sieving step and iterate. And the ones that are left are these. So here we have even more distinctly 7 and 13 hanging out there right next to each other, along with our lucky friend 3 and an all-star classic. So 7 and 13 are also in this sieve, which is to me, almost sounds more fundamental. Why jump to the 7th to filter next, because that's the next thing there? Why not go to the 4th and the 5th on the way? Leave ourselves fewer numbers. Well, maybe it's that lucky numbers, I don't know if just their nickname helped them get some street cred, or if they do have more interesting properties, but I know these have been investigated a bit, and they do have some interesting properties in common with primes. These properties, as far as their distribution over ranges, share some similarities with primes, even though their technique is different. Primes are similar because we can apply the sieve of Eratosthenes, or something along those lines, where we look at the second, and we delete one to start, then we look at the second, and then we delete every second apart from that. And then we look at the third, and we delete every third, but not every third remaining. These ones we're doing like every third that's left on the list. Then just like every third counting the original list would be the typical sieve for the primes. So I wanted to share the name of this other kind of similar one today. Also, for any meme lovers, I did spot that 69 is also a lucky number. So for anyone who likes your meme numbers, if anyone asks you why you're talking about this number ever, you can say it's because it is left over after the sieve of the lucky numbers is applied. So let's now move on to some other topics. We're not doing a crazy amount of math in today's stream because I'm almost done with a full math episode coming out on the main combo class channel. That will be coming out probably tomorrow. I'm going to say this weekend to be safe. Although when the stream processes, it's almost tomorrow in terms of midnight's a few hours away. So we'll say it'll be out this weekend. Then it's both less confusing and less likely that I miss a deadline. Now, that episode will be the one about the Collatz conjecture, but for even those who know about that open question, I might not know about all these extensions. We look at negative numbers, we look at binary interpretations and things like that. So that will be fun to do. And somebody mentioned the name here, Stick said, is a guero frog. And yeah, the term for this is something like a huero or a guero or huero or something. Huero. I remember we would sell stuff like that in the shop when I worked there a while ago. These things are nice. Now, a lot of other fun things as well. Somebody mentioned someone should make a board game with unusual dice. I still think there should even just be board games involving dice. I've designed some ideas before with friends and on my own and such of ideas of using a chessboard, but using dice as the pieces and certain mechanisms where they turn for their faces. I think there's a lot of potential there to explore. I think that you could theoretically design a game with chess-like complexity, but where all the pieces are six-sided dice, and one of the mechanisms relates to you switch their side, or you switch their face in some way, and the face relates to their abilities. So we will certainly test that going forward. I like game design. I've still been geeking out about the theory behind magic cards recently, and I am going to make a bonus video or even episode about that at some point, about some of my findings about certain theory about constructing combos in decks and such, and what that means for game theory and how we can visualize that in different ways. And whether there is a deck under which rulings and which allowedness of cards that always wins on the first turn. And the answer is more complex than you might think. So, lots of great notes here in the comments. Thank you all. Somebody said they love birds. They're the word. That's true. Not only are birds the word, but I love birds as well. We were getting some nice ones earlier, but I think they're sleeping here. So, now that we've gone through a few of our topics, I want to show you some other strange things. Well, more like one strange thing. So, the other day, I showed a jar on the stream. This, let me find this, because it's, let me find the video of this, actually, because while it seems random to try and pull up a video of one of my past streams just to show something, it's definitely going to help the context here. So, on a stream the other day, I showed a jar that was sort of like this sort of jar, but not with lights in it. And this jar I had filled with some pond water in a pond that's in the yard I share with some neighbors. And in this pond water, I had also, it was full of all sorts of strange little creatures. And there were two main types. Unfortunately, one of them was mosquitoes, and I have, I think, eradicated those from the pond, hopefully. The other type, which appears to have tunneled under this plant that was in the pond, and might still be there in the pond, which I don't think necessarily survived the one or two that made it in the jar, because these things are freaky. I was okay with these things dying. I'm sorry if you're a pure animal lover. I love animals, but these are freaky looking things. And when you have a lot of mosquito larvae, you got to be okay killing a few things too. It's can't just unleash mosquito parasites on the whole neighborhood. Now, with these other freaky looking things we'll look at in a minute, some of them and some of the mosquito larvae were in this jar. And this jar that I had, that I showed, was full of some basically clear pond water, because we had already flushed out the pond with a hose. We'd already run a hose all the way through the pond for a long time and flushed the water in and out. So it wasn't murky water that I had in the little jar. I'm trying to find where the jar is right here. Here. So this is this jar I'm referring to, that I just want you to look at what the water looks like. So it was pretty flushed out water. So there wasn't any pond gunk in it anymore much. It was mostly the creatures that stuck around despite flushing out the water. So there was little creatures that got in it, like the mosquito larvae and these other things. But the water itself is pretty clear. It was mostly hose water. Now, I don't know what caused this, but I checked this jar today. You want to see what this jar looks like now? This jar is bright green. It's the pondier than a pond. The mosquitoes are still alive. I don't know about the other things, but the mosquitoes are still twitching around in there. I don't know if some of the animals decomposing did this, or if there was like little bits of fungus in there or something that weren't visible when you just had mostly water, and then they like unleashed their visibility. But look, this is what it looked like in the stream. Okay, it was 13 days ago was when I streamed that, and this is when this is. Look at that. Why did it turn bright green? Some pondologist needs to get up in here and tell me why this turned bright green. So that's kind of weird, but we'll look at the creatures themselves later. I don't have the creatures necessarily right here. They're hard to see in the pond and it's pretty dark. But I have been researching the other things. I'm not going to show the gross picture of them again. What they looked like here were these almost like parasitic, like tapeworm-like things. And then I looked up the name and they sounded even less appealing. They were called rat-tailed maggots. And there's these things called rat-tailed maggots. But wait. I know that sounds gross, but here's the thing. I researched it more, and in that stream I said, well, I'm trying not to be bothered by them because it looks like they turn into a thing called hoverflies. Hoverflies don't sound as bad. Now, I've looked more into hoverflies. I'm grown to like the idea of these hoverflies. Not that I want to have a billion of them around. We still are trying to drain out the water from there. Most of them, they go into dirt after they're in their larval stage. So then, okay, we actually have to see the larva because it's going to look a little gross for a second. But there's a cute phase because when you look at these things, these are sort of what the really gross ones in the pond look like. But then there's like some pictures of other hoverfly larvae that I don't know if those are going to go to this phase at any point or if these are just like their cousins or something. But these were looking kind of cute, and these were larvae of the same family at some point. And then you just look up hoverfly, and they're these fake bees. It's going to turn into like a smaller fake bee-looking thing of some sort. There's a bunch of varieties. Now, I'm not scared of bees. If I see a little bee come around, I'm not going to mind when I care if it is or isn't a hoverfly. So I'm okay with a fake bee that can't sting and happens to look like a bee. That sounds cool. But some people tweak out when a bee comes. And I'm worried that whenever I have people over, they're going to be tweaking out when they have a hoverfly comes by because they're going to be freaking and whatever because they think it's a bee, even if it doesn't sting. Now, here's the thing. I looked up more about hoverflies, and apparently they're one of the biggest pollinators. Apparently they're one of the most helpful pollinators. And pollination is incredibly important. If you want to grow cool fruits in your garden, like I would love the fruits to continue to thrive, and bees are endangered. Bees, I mean, maybe not actually that word, endangered. That might not be, endangered is an actual term scientifically, so bees might not be that, but bees are in danger. We need more bees than we have, and so pollination is underrated, and pollinators are underrated for sure. Maybe pollination isn't underrated, but the pollinators are underrated. And so when I read more and I found out that these hoverflies are a great pollinator, I decided, well, although I did drain the pond, and not all of them will survive, they looked old enough to start burrowing into the dirt where they would burrow if I don't interrupt anything, and then they would make some of these. I decided to let them do it to a degree. We're going to get rid of the mosquitoes, but we're not going to worry if some hoverflies come out because they'll pollinate. They'll be good for everything. Who cares if people are freaking out about some bee lookalikes? Maybe some bee lookalikes who never sting will help the bee cause, help their name in society. So, that's some little facts about our hoverflies. Somebody asked where I live. I'm in the Bay Area of California. Now, somebody asked if I have fish. Well, we would get fish. I mentioned this in the other stream. We would get mosquito fish that you can order from the city. The city will bring you free mosquito fish if you have a pond. They don't want the mosquitoes. They want to bring you free fish. But the fish kept disappearing. We would sometimes... There's a chance my cats could have eaten some, but even more likely, I saw at least once a raccoon at the pond, just like waiting, digging, eating a fish. And I was like, oh my God, by getting these free fish from the city, we're just feeding the feral raccoons. We're just making a little buffet for these feral raccoons. So we stopped getting the mosquito fish partially because they would vanish and we thought we were just feeding them to some other animal. And partially because there's this plant in the pond we'll take a closer look at another day that grows out of control so quickly. And we don't want to completely destroy it. It's nice looking. But whenever we cut it tiny, it gets huge, all like really quick. And not like in a day, but like quickly. So we weren't able to keep the mosquito fish in there for long. Maybe we'll try again sometime. So, I need to run inside and go to the bathroom real quick, and then we're going to talk about UFOs, which was the other topic in the title. We're also going to talk about some other fun things. So, once again, love to have you all here. Hope some of you stick around for me being back in like 3 minutes, and if any of you don't, make sure that you tune into the main combo class channel in the next day or two, sometime this weekend, for a cool main episode. But I'll be back soon. And I need a light. It's very dark. Oh God. I get confident when I'm seeing good for a minute, when things are going my way, and then I don't care where I put the phone. And I mean, my eyes are good. It's just really dark. And then when I'm like seeing the right bright direction, I just put my phone somewhere random. But I got it. Salvaged it. I'll be back in a few minutes. Hope you all stick around. Alright, folks, we're back in the spooky classroom. So spooky. Oh, I forgot to grab a lighter for the candles. We'll have to do candles another day. We got some cool lights in the background there. It is our first time with some changing color ones. That's pretty neat. Another fun thing I forgot to mention is another package-like thing that came in the mail that I haven't set up. I got the package, but I need to set up through another company that is still in progress that will be set up here before too long. Is a upgraded bird feeder. I mentioned that once, and that it will still be set up before long, sent by George Carozzi, another cool combo lord. So that's another mail-like thing to mention. And hello to Magic Fellow, who is our OG Discord moderator and a main combo lord. And welcome to all the combo lords who are around here in the chat. Now, I mentioned we would talk about UFOs, spooky, look at the sky. I wonder if we can see any constellations if we go out front. It's funny here in the city. It really varies how the light pollution is. I don't know if you know much about light pollution, but if there weren't any city lights, then we'd be able to see beautiful stars every night. But with all the city lights, you can't always. When you go camping, oh boy, you look out. If you are a half hour from where there's lights on in any direction, there could be some lanterns on if other people are camping or whatever, but you go half an hour from any big city lights, any highways and such, then you will see such crazy stars. Now, they shift throughout the year. You'll see different stars at different times, but you'll see some good ones. Here, the light pollution really varies. Sometimes I go outside and I'm shocked to note, whoa, I can see a lot of stars tonight. But tonight I can't see that many. It also gets foggy here in the Bay Area, so there's a mix of things like that. Now, the reason I was looking up there and noting that is that's probably the direction aliens could be. Well, actually, direction, they're, out is the direction. There was it Buckminster Fuller, I think, might have been the one who said that instead of up and down, we should be using the terms out and in. And it is sort of true that up and down is sort of a gravitational bias, and that there's without that bias, out and in is more applicable to a 3D space. But to whoever asked if I'm an addict, I'm not. We're outdoors. But if you asked why are there clocks, yeah, we got a lot of clocks. There's a lot of clocks. So we're not in an attic, though. Now, there's, with the aliens up there, I have many personal philosophies that I have semi-jokingly shared that we're going to go into more in-depth in the future, not necessarily today, about ways in which I think we could appreciate the hypotheticalness of aliens maybe someday watching anything we do or someday visiting us in some form to be good, funny, interesting humans and imagine that we're on alien TV in some way. And maybe they're watching their own version of Combo Class. But you see, I cut down my favorite bits of Combo Class for my episodes on the main Combo Class channel, like I say. Here we get a more uncut stuff, but maybe aliens are seeing the full uncut version sometime in the future with some great telescope. And because, it takes light a while to travel, so they'll be in the future if they're seeing the present with a telescope. And maybe they're cutting it down differently. Maybe it's all the moments I stub my toe, all the moments I mess up in a line in a way they think's funny, all the things that I thought was funny, maybe they thought were actually really deep, and maybe all the things I thought were deep, they thought were funny. So, who knows? But maybe aliens are cutting their own version of our show, and maybe we can try and be interesting, good people for that, for the aliens' sake. But that's a story for another day. The reason why I put UFOs in today's title is because a lot of people have been talking about possibilities of aliens existing due to a conversation or conversations about UFOs in the United States Congress, which is a big political type of institution that doesn't do much talking about aliens. They don't talk too much about space travel in general. They're more focused on a lot of junk on the Earth, including some things that are important and including some problems that are just being cooked up by the people involving the people who are on these committees. But they had some important talks about UFOs there, and that has been a conversation piece in the news. And I think there's some misconceptions on both sides of the aisle about that, as usual. The answer isn't going to be as simple as no, there definitely haven't been aliens that visited us, or yes, there definitely have been aliens that visited us. Obviously, it's somewhere in between those. I'm not saying I have either a proof that aliens do have or haven't visited us, but there's still on either side of the aisle, or even people who are in the middle of that aisle, some misconceptions going on, I think. And so one thing, I would like to note a few things, which is that mathematically, I think that it's highly likely that there are many aliens in the universe. I don't think it has been demonstrated whether or not we know if any two alien species between each other or between one of them and us are close enough in the universal scale to contact each other. Things like the speed of light may be difficult, even for an alien that's more advanced than us. And so, let's start off with that knowledge, that we're still, even though it is very when you're asked, do you believe in aliens? If you believe in aliens, you probably should think that it's likely there are aliens somewhere out there. But also that does not mean that they're necessarily close enough to contact any of each other. If you imagine a massive football field, but much bigger than a football field, but just for our analogy, imagine a football field with a bunch of grains of sand scattered on it. The fact that there are other grains of sand doesn't mean, say, any two grains of sand are within an inch of each other. And maybe there is a cosmic distance that no matter how good your technology is, things like the speed of light and other forces would prevent a craft from traveling that far in the lifetimes of an applicable thing, or in some way that would work. However, that's not guaranteed. There could be aliens that have visited us. But if aliens have visited us, let's think about whether it necessarily lines up with all of the conspiracy theories or practical, possibly, thoughts about ways in which aliens may have visited us. This Congress meeting was from a guy who had military credentials and had official sorts of jobs, who was sort of a whistleblower, you could call it, of saying that he was revealing secrets from within the government, that he had observed things that he wanted to share with the public that he thought the government was hiding. And these things were a very particular sort of alien, over the years, aliens being covered up and aliens having visited and such like that. And in a very particular way. We have to be careful, because at this point, I would agree with theoretically that concept so far. You know, it's like, okay, I don't auto-trust someone based on their credentials, but somebody who worked in the government, who has something to say about what the government might be hiding relating to aliens, sounds pretty interesting at the very least. But when you look a little deeper into some of the thoughts, what this person is saying is that there has been a many year conspiracy with humanoid aliens or non-human aliens. When you read other texts from some of the people who have made testimonials in these trials, they have said things about thinking it could relate to other dimensions, just starting to get a little out there. and these are other testimonials and interviews and other things people correlated to these new testimonials have said. And most of these conspiracies relate to something over hundreds of years that is extra particularly focused in the United States. Now, it raises a few questions. So, if aliens are able to fly all the way out here, achieve a feat that we don't even know if it's possible, it is so beyond the scope of technology and wisdom that we currently have, that they have done this many, many times and crashed. That many, many times they have crashed and they have messed up, and they're able to visit an unbelievable distance with technologies that evade normal radar, that evade normal cameras by looking like a blur and stuff, but they crash. And not only do they crash, they really like to crash in the US, apparently, in the United States. Now, a lot of these beliefs start to become weirdly like patriotic, which I'm not a hugely patriotic person, like pro-America in a weird way. That a lot of them are centered around the idea that the Pentagon in the US is the center of this global conspiracy. And of course, it's the United States that would be where the aliens would visit and accidentally crash, which is a weirdly egotistical belief in a way. If the aliens were visiting, why wouldn't it have been all over the planet? And why wouldn't some of if they were visiting the degree to which the Pentagon was supposedly covering up, there would be far more alien crashes throughout Asia, and all of those governments would have reacted to it in different ways. Now, additionally, let's note what would be on the other, that's one possibility, that aliens have been visiting in the way that these whistleblowers are saying. And this, when you really look into the testimonials and interviews they've given outside this, it's not just saying that the United States has collected crafts that have some specimens that have extraterrestrial nature. It's saying that these people have said throughout these testimonials and other interviews that aliens have escaped and were on the loose in the Pentagon, that aliens have murdered, these same aliens who have came off the crafts have murdered humans, that the governments have secretly made deals with these aliens. And it starts becoming like this sci-fi story the more you read into it. And let's imagine what are some other options. Well, one option is that aliens are able to achieve unbelievable technological feats that we're not sure if they're possible or not, but for some reason they always crash, and for some reason it's always in the US, and that the Pentagon has achieved this task of covering up the biggest news to the human race since the invention of fire, or maybe even since before that. Maybe the biggest thing that has ever happened to the human race, another species visiting. They've managed to cover it up in this modern era of cell phones being everywhere. You can't walk down a street corner without a detailed photo of your face being on TikTok or something. But every photo of the alien ships is a blur still. You only get blurry photos of those, but you can get a detailed footage of, if we Google porcupine riding a plane, we'll get a picture that's detailed of a porcupine riding a plane probably. But you can't get a detailed photo of the aliens. That it's all been covered up in that weird way is one possibility. Let's think of other possibilities. Well, the people making these testimonials, which, let's remember, a lot of people want to say it's brand new stuff that this is being talked about in Congress. Yeah, it's newish that the government is a bipartisan-ish issue where both parties are agreeing to talk about this thing related to space. Pretty newish, but there was very similar things every dozen years. You look back 10 years ago, it's like, the big things coming out. This is the year that the whistleblower, the true whistleblower, says the news is coming out this year, 10 years before that. This is the year when the whistleblower said that the government's hiding something and it's all going to be revealed soon, 10 years before that, etc. Now, yet throughout all of those decades, the photos are still all blurs. So what are the other possibilities? Well, there are monetary benefits to this. There are people who are crazy. There are reasons that and these are probably not all happening at the same time, but any of these could, if just the chance that there are so many different possibilities that all sound more likely individually than the aliens really liking the US and always crashing and having better technology than radar can detect, but somehow is a blur on camera. And the other possibilities could be maybe people are a little crazy, or maybe people like having their name in the news, or maybe people believe there's aliens and they falsely think that the right way to go about the goal of spreading awareness is to say overdramatic thing about, in particular, the Pentagon. Or maybe this is a plan of some sorts. This is going to sound a little conspiracy theory-esque, and there's no way of knowing if this is sure or not, but it raises questions with all this. The U.S. is hiding all this weird stuff. It raises questions about the U.S. actually does terrible military stuff to other countries with military planes that they are trying to keep secret what those planes are able to do. Wouldn't it be an awful good cover-up to say all the weird stuff in the sky that we're not allowed to talk about is not related to all these bombings the U.S. does of other countries on Earth that are factually proven? It's aliens. Wouldn't that be a pretty good cover-up if you were the U.S.? So it raises a lot of weird suspicion. And when you dive deeper into these things, while I do think there's a chance aliens could have visited Earth in some shape or form, it is absolutely not in the way that this guy testifying to Congress is saying. I guess I won't say I'm 100% sure the guy is either lying or wrong, but I'm more than 99% sure. Because when you look at all the stories, it is absolutely absurdist that this sort of conspiracy not only would happen, but that if it happened, that it would actually be able to have evaded the press for so long. And even now, so conveniently, they won't show any evidence to the public. People who believe this are believing that this guy said he has seen evidence. He said anytime he wants to say something about, the aliens are so crazy and the aliens are going to destroy everything and it's crazy, he'll say that. But when asked certain questions, he says, I'm not allowed to talk about that. Pretty convenient. So it's like the guy's not allowed to talk about any of the evidence, but he is allowed, except for the fun sci-fi tale parts of it. So it's very suspicious when you look at the details of these things, and in my opinion, almost discredits the idea of aliens maybe have visited Earth at some point, who knows? Because it like splits the aisle down the middle of, do you believe this guy or not? And that is not actually the true aisle of, do you believe in aliens or not? Because I like thinking about aliens, and who knows if they've visited Earth in some form. But as my final synopsis of all that, I think it's more likely that either someone's crazy, or somebody wants attention, or it helps the US government cover up their military stuff, or that it's helping someone make money, or any mix of those, then that aliens have been crashing by the dozens, mostly in the US, And the US government has this magnificent conspiracy over more than 50 years that somehow has never leaked. And that the aliens have been making deals with the government, escaping, killing humans, that they might be from other dimensions, that... So, you know what I mean? That's my opinion on it. I don't think that those modern Congress trials going on right now are accurate or factual. And I think it's a little unfortunate. I'm not positive about it, like I said. Maybe I'm about 99 or 99.5% sure of that. Who knows? I could be wrong, because there's a chance it's that other very unlikely sounding scenario. But regardless of how that all shakes up, let's remain a little, maintaining hypotheses more than answers. Questions are okay with stuff like this. Let's appreciate that, we don't have to know right now. It'll be cool as we know more about it. But right now we can imagine perhaps there has been times aliens have visited, or perhaps not yet. Perhaps in the future there will come a time. I think that the most likely humans are going to have for proving a good step on that is not going to be that we prove there's this insane invasion on the Pentagon. It's going to be like finding moss on Mars or things like that. Proving traits about life being able to be close enough to other types of life. And if aliens do invade us, I think it'll be pretty obvious. I don't think it's going to be something... I think it's either going to be... If aliens came here, it would either be so small or so different that we wouldn't notice it. Or it would be if it's significant enough to notice, I think more than just 20 secret Pentagon officials are going to notice it on actual footage, not in a blurry photograph. On actual proof that's not, he said that his friend told him. So, we'll go more into things like that in the future. It is quite interesting. So, it is pretty weird, to listen through some of those things. You haven't really heard things exactly like that be said in a Congress trial before. So, if anything, hopefully it won't, end up being proven so false that it ends up backtracking any willingness to discuss this. But hopefully it will open the ability for these things to be discussed more as people. But I don't know. Something about that rubbed me the wrong way with the degree to which it had all the signs of an overly conspiracy thing and all the signs of an overly militaristic government, U.S. government patriotic thing. Even though the guy was saying the government was lying, it was weirdly glorifying of supposedly what the U.S. government is able to do compared to the rest of the world, and what it was weirdly on the big scale actually glorifying the U.S. government. Somebody said, what if I'm sent by aliens? I can neither confirm nor deny whether I was born on this planet or not. If anyone out here is an alien, it's probably me. So, yeah, maybe that'll be an episode someday. I said I'll reveal more of my secrets in episodes. Maybe that'll be one of them. Now, there's a lot of great comments here. I can't answer all the cool comments, but we will discuss more various things about the history of what humans do and don't know about aliens at various points. I also like writing about aliens, so as I publish more of my fiction works at some point in my life, there will be certain alien appearances in those. If anyone wants some good alien literature, it's fiction, but probably closer to the actual aliens that exist than a lot of what you'll hear on the news is The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. It's a great one with aliens. So another author I mentioned not long ago, Kurt Vonnegut, also had many alien species that were quite interesting in the books. So, make some hypotheses about aliens. Write and read about aliens. And maybe get a telescope. But don't believe everything you hear. So, the last thing I'll end with is, whose quote is this? Let me see who said this before I say the quote. A good quote about when you actually want to jump from believing, oh, that's a fun possibility, to believing, I think that is likely. This is Carl Sagan who said it. Great science communicator. Carl Sagan, brilliant guy. Said that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. And it's true. And he was like me in that he would have loved to hear that aliens were visiting. He loved space. He knew way more about space than even me, even past me. He was all into concepts of aliens and stuff. But extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. So, unless you get extraordinary evidence, you might want to keep your alien thoughts at hypotheses. So, that's most of what I wanted to talk about today. We will be back, like I said, for a main episode sometime this weekend on the main combo class channel. That will be about cool numbery things, like I've mentioned. I had talked enough about that one. There will also be other various fun things coming out here soon, too. And you can check the description for other fun links, like our Discord and etc. Thank you all for joining me here today. I think I'm going to wrap up because getting close to 11 p.m. here. And I have various things I could work on, as well as shouldn't bother the neighbors too late. But we'll be back before long. I love doing these streams, so it's only going to be a day or two before we have another stream as well. So, love you all. I will catch you again in the next one. Hope you all have a great day, night, or whatever time it is for you. And until next time,